Hey y'all, grown black folks talk. Being vetted on site. Yes, it does happen. How to be prepared for it. Okay, so I mentioned in the freedom video that while I was at the park enjoying my freedom around 2:48 or thereabouts to be at the park and to be sitting there because of some steps toward financial freedom that I have been able to make, there was an assault. And I didn't get into because I thought we're going to decenter certain people and we're going to decenter certain other people. But I need to tell you that it was a homeless black man with his pants down around his waist, down below his butt, that attacked this beautiful white woman in her dress as she was just walking through the park past him and didn't give him any mind, and he snapped. I have my hiking poles, but I was a long way away. But I took off because it's just like I've grown up in an environment where I've seen my father defend people, but people do not always do it. People get around and sometimes watch things. When I grew up, there was a crack house on the corner. So little different situation. However, I stopped immediately when I saw all these men who were getting up and going in that direction, and he ran off. It turned out she was okay. And the men who were nearer to her made sure she was okay. Anyway, I talked to a gentleman named Richard, who I happened to stop. He was a little bit older and about as slow as I was, but you know, and I remember, here's what he asked me. I was the only black person in the park. Do you live in the neighborhood? I said, yes. Do you know him? I said, no. Now, the immediate emotional response to this is that's a racist microaggression. Why would you assume the only other black person in the park knows that person? I thought about it, but then I also realized my community now is not that neighborhood it was 20 years ago. And the black and the white neighborhood associations around here are the reason why. 30 years ago ish, 25 to 30 years ago, when the crack house devolved, and I guess Richard would have been old enough to know about that actually. When the crack house devolved into everybody else's house, gentrification finished in my neighborhood like that. We woke up one morning soon after that, and there were no black people left except those that owned their houses. The white neighborhood associations that are around here do not play at all. And San Francisco has a history of gang injunctions. See, if you're on public housing and everybody assumes a fat black woman like me just might be on Section 8 to live here, although that's not true, because of grandfather, I own this that I live in. But people assume that because most people didn't. Most people were renting, and that's how they got put out. Gang injunctions work like this. If you had someone who was listed as a gang on a gang, some kind of gang sheet somewhere, of course, were you involved in making up that sheet? No, you were not. So if some man in your family got on that list, you lost your housing. And if you didn't lose your housing that way, your white neighbors would figure out how to take you out. That's the context in which I have to live in San Francisco, a city that decided in 1947 that it wanted black people to leave anyway. So the questions that he asked are based in a certain racist history. People will move on you here. But here's the thing about it. I've been telling y'all about vetting. When you move up into higher circles or one moves around you, circles that are more stable because they put the undesirable elements out. That gentleman is living on borrowed time because a lot of people have now made his description. I saw, between the trees. So I didn't see him well enough, but there were a lot of people nearby that did. He got messed with a white woman. Y'all already know it's still the United States of America. Whole lot of black homeless men are gonna pay for that. Best believe that's gonna be the situation. Somebody who fits his description is gonna pay for that in his neighborhood. Best believe that's gonna happen. But here's the thing, step back from the racism for just a moment. For those of you particularly who are interested in hypergamy, understand people who have things, some of the houses around here, at the height of the housing market, I mean, you sell a dust bucket for $1 million. People who have access to these things are not going to let it be messed up. They're not going to make an exception for one person, because if you make an exception for one person, and I'll do my next video about a story time about a very sad story about that, you make an exception and you keep making exceptions and suddenly everything you have is torn up. So even though I'm not terribly happy that this white man assumed that I might have known him, I can understand the racism, but I also can understand the vetting. Other people have read our stats. White people, Latino people, and Asian people have read our stats. Our stats say that 1/3 of black men, 1/6 of black adults are convicted criminals. Our stats say also that we had to have a whole crackdown in San Francisco because San Francisco's HUD department was not even giving Section 8 vouchers for Black people to even live here. They were doing surrounding areas. So already San Francisco made its decision a very long, I'm trying to look at this calendar, 1947 to 2022 is a gosh darn long time. San Francisco's already made a decision like 75 years ago that we weren't supposed to be here anyway. You've got those gang injunctions because mamas and grandmothers and sisters and girlfriends are giving these people housing. And so, and this is why I've said earlier in the how to uplift yourself and be uplifted video, it is silly to believe that we're going to do anything without considering the state of Black men. It's too late. That knot has already been tied. We will be vetted for our associations. And the die has already been cast. But see, if you do want to move up, being a chaste middle-aged Black woman who is observed doing exercise and losing weight with no attachments to any foolishness helps me be able to move up. If you have made different decisions, it's just going to be more difficult. And if you're a Black man, it's going to become increasingly difficult, even for those, and I know a goodly number of Black men who do not deserve that. It's going to become increasingly difficult because people are literally vetting your existence. Now, under racism, people are always doing this. But even here in 2022, when something pops off, people are vetting hard because there's a recession coming and people want to keep what they have. I was vetted on site after a crime that I did not commit. Yes, racism. Yes, a white man did a racist act. But behind that, you also have to recognize that people are going to protect their space as best they can. And if 1/6 of the adults are a known threat to protecting property and life, you're just going to have to work with that. And be able, when you get these questions, to have lived in such a way that you can answer no as much as you can. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of you have well-ordered families. Some of you are married, Black husbands, Black children. Doesn't mean you cannot move ahead. It's just you have to be able, and you have to be able to understand that it's not just racism. It is people are reading data about our condition. So you just have to get ready for it. You have to, a lot of people, this is respectability politics. No, this is people know that 1/6 of the adults have a criminal record. Respectability politics does not always help you either, because sometimes people are just like, we're not going to be bothered because we don't think you deserve to live here. But if people are trying to protect themselves and their property in a neighborhood that has a history of what it was like before it was turned over and gentrified, people have a right to protect themselves and their property and their associations. And this is what Mr. Richard was doing. Now, if someday I'm dressed in, I was in my sundress. Shout out, I can't read the script, but shout out to the person that reminded me about the sunscreen, because San Francisco has never been this sunny, this late, this kind of a year, the way it's been. So I do need to invest in that. Thank you very kindly. But I'm out there in my sundress. But if I was wearing my pink or my coral and all the rest of it, and he should happen to see me at some time, be like, "Can I get you a coffee?" "No, thank you. I appreciate it." Remember how you assumed that that man who did that all belonged to me? Yeah, no. That's not gonna happen. But I can understand beyond the racism where it was coming from. And I'm hipping you to this story time of being vetted on site so that you can understand if you choose to move into, as you move into higher circles, understand that you're going to be questioned when you come in the door. Some of it's going to be racism. Some of it's going to be the stats we really have. Note who does it, but also don't just get offended. Recognize there are reasons people do that, particularly as the recession is happening. We've already had 2 years of COVID. People are getting desperate and people need to protect what they have. And so automatically, unfortunately, people assume Black people are a threat. Some of that is racism, but then there's stats and data. So get ready for it. Get your life cleaned up as much as you can and keep moving forward. Just be prepared. Just forearm is forearm. Don't be offended. Be prepared. All right. Y'all have a good day now. Goodbye. And come back a little bit later with a story time about what happens if you don't protect what you have. That'll come out a little later. Thank you for listening. And I have a lot of new subscribers all of a sudden. Thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. Goodbye.